Hey y'all, it's Dr. Maiysha, and we are back on another episode of the Black Mind Garden, where we are remapping minds so you can create a life you design. I am super excited today because we are talking about financial literacy, something we have not talked about on the show before. And we're talking about it with an amazing, and I'm going to say young man, because, I'm not old, but to me, he's a young man, but he is a grown ass man. Don't get it twisted. And his name is Calvin Wilkinson. He's the owner of Goldwater Home Loans. And who he is to me is he's my mortgage guy, right? So he is, as I'm stepping into the world of real estate investment, he has been supporting, helping, and helping me get funded and just being one of my team players. So I'm excited to have him on because we've had some really, really good conversations offline around building generational wealth, around the importance of financial literacy. And I was like, we need to have this conversation publicly. So welcome, Calvin. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing really well. And I'm so excited that you're here because I think this is such an important topic. So, I always like to start out by having the listeners know who you are. So tell us a little bit about you, about how you came to be in this arena and how you came to already be in the space of financial literacy at your age. I'm going to tell your age later, you guys.
So, do you want the short story or do you want the long story? Do you want it from the very beginning, the origins, or do you want, just my story?
Give it to me however you think you think
Okay.
is valuable. If you want to give me the long story, we want to hear the long story. We've got time.
Okay, great. So we'll start from the very beginning then. Okay.
Yes.
As Dr. Maiysha said, my name is Calvin Wilkinson. I'm from New York. I moved from New York to Atlanta when I was the age of 3. My parents are of Caribbean descent. So my mother is from Grenada, a small island in the Caribbean. It has about 100,000 people. And my dad's from Guyana, which is a country in South America. It's very closely affiliated with the Caribbean, though, culturally.
Wait.
So
I'm sorry. I gotta
that's where I
pause you.
come from.
That totally makes sense. You're from Grenada.
I'm from Grenada.
And yes, you're of
My mom,
Grenadian and Guyana. You said Guyana was your father, right?
Guyana,
Yes.
correct.
Oh, okay. So now I'm going to tell you why it's making sense in a moment, but it makes so much sense now. You're of Caribbean descent. All right, go.
Of Caribbean descent. So that's where I came from. I came from two parents who were from the Caribbean. Well, I wasn't there yet. So it was more like my parents moved to New York and they started their medical careers. My dad is a medical doctor currently, but he went to New York for his college degree. And then once he received that, he moved over to Atlanta for his residency, where myself and my oldest brother came along with them. I went to school here in Atlanta, Georgia, and was raised here. Eventually went off to college in Virginia at a school called William and Mary. It's a small liberal arts school.
I'm
There I
sorry.
studied biology.
Look, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you one more time. What is your dad's name?
Colin Wilkinson.
Oh my God, I know your dad.
You know my dad?
I know your dad.
That's
Okay,
amazing. I love that.
when it just clicked when you said your dad is from Guyana and he's a medical doctor and then he moved to Atlanta. I thought to myself, this is not the Dr. Wilkinson that I know because I know your age. You guys, this stellar young man is 27 years old. So then I did the calculation and I was like, oh, his dad is my age. Do I know him? And I know Colin. That is so amazing. He's an awesome dude. Okay, keep going. I've got to tell you a little story when you're done.
So moved to Atlanta, and then I went to college, William and Mary, Virginia. While I was at college, my parents put the pressure on me. They were like, become a medical doctor, follow the family tradition. And so I studied biology for the first couple. Well, I studied biology throughout my whole college career.
Mhm.
My interest in it was probably for the first couple years because I realized that I had a better acumen for business and finance. That's where my heart lied. I wanted to build companies. I wanted to organize people and lead people and try to accomplish big things, which you can do with a medical degree. But I felt like for me personally, that wasn't my academic expertise. So I finished out my degree in biology, and I actually graduated in 2016.
All right. So you went to Mercer.
Yes, I went to Mercer University to get my master's in public health, mainly because my mother at the time when I came home was like any Caribbean mother usually is pressing the issue for you to, become a lawyer or a doctor, just make something of yourself, right? Because I came from school with a biology degree, but I didn't have any prospects really for a job. I didn't want to be in a research lab, and I wasn't going down the doctor route, which was the initial plan. So I had to figure out for myself what my next step was going to be.
That's right.
And so I enrolled in Mercer University, kind of just as a thing to appease my mother, make her happy. But honestly, I have no regrets about it now. I'm completely happy about it. While I was there, I was first job I actually got was selling Obama phones as just a salesman, because I was just so motivated. I was so hungry for success. I was like, just show me the way. There was no fear in my heart. It's like, show me the way to success and I'll do it, no matter what. That was my attitude. So any opportunity, any little sliver of light that I saw, I was going for it full force. So I was selling phones, Obama phones. I got $10 per phone sold. I would drop my brother off at school at 6:30 in the morning, go to that office in Sandy Springs at 7:30, and I'd be there till like 8 or 9. That didn't last very long. It lasted like maybe 2 months. That was like really my first job ever. But after that, I had to find something more permanent. So luckily, I ran into my dad's mentor, my dad's friend, who became my mentor in the mortgage business. He taught me about just about everything I know in terms of setting up a mortgage company, because he owned a direct lender called Westminster Mortgage. His name is Vincent Terry now. He has another mortgage company in like Tennessee and North Carolina now. But he was a mentor to me. He really took me under his wing, and he taught me the basics of applying for a mortgage company license, handling the business, handling customers, and those sorts of things. So that was my first like big break.
Right.
It was surprising to me because it wasn't related at all to biology, and it wasn't related at all to public health. But here I am, going to public health classes in the evenings, but by day I'm working as a mortgage professional and learning business, which was a huge blessing.
Absolutely.
So after I left Westminster, I went to a company called First Fidelity Funding, which was like a smaller mortgage company. And there I learned how to hone my skills as an individual in the business with less support staff. And that's where I really got the ability to work independently in the mortgage space and kind of understand the process from beginning to end. After that, I went to a company called Mylan, which was a larger company. And that really opened my eyes to how big the mortgage business is and how much it can help our community, Because when I looked around, I was like, well, there's no one who looks like me. There's definitely no one my age, because in our business, the mortgage business, the average loan officer, which is who most consumers speak to, is quite frankly a white man in their late 50s.
Yeah.
And in this business, I feel like it's a lot like being a physician, in a sense of like, you maybe are a financial doctor, and your job is to help those people get their financial solutions or their financial life set. And that job, it goes on a continuum. Some people are really good at it. They're going to apply a great bedside manner and care a lot about their clients. And some people are just going to be like, hey, you qualify or you don't, we'll keep it moving.
Right.
But what we provide as our company is we're actually going to coach you through the whole process from beginning to end. We're going to be patient with you. If you're not there today, we're going to help you get there tomorrow. And I felt like a lot of the larger companies, they don't give you that precaution. It's like, you're applying and it's yes or no, and we'll see you in 6 months or a year, So that's a part of the market that we fill, is we are actually your advisors. We understand you. We are a lot of the times your friend, because we have a lot of friendly people that work with our company. And we just try to approach it from that perspective. And my experience from being working at Westminster, which is where I started off, to working at Myland, which is where I ended, has all led me to be someone who I feel like is a financial expert for our community. And I feel like I can help a lot of people through that.
Yeah. Well, I just think that's so valuable because you're right. I mean, having dealt with several, and over time, several mortgage professionals, it's rare to come across someone. First of all, it's rare to come across someone of your age, right? And you're right. The average age is like middle-aged white man, 40, late 40s, 50s, early 50s, right? And so it is, and quite frankly, and I think I shared this with you, one of the reasons I think I reached out to you personally because I was looking for a person of color, a Black person who was a mortgage person I'm big on supporting Black businesses, right? And I think I shared that with you. And so that's one of the benefits of having someone who has a little bit like more intimate of an operation is that you get that coaching through the process. And so I think that's what we need because, I can share from my standpoint, and this is, why I said a little bit earlier, pre-conversation, pre-recording, is that it's really great to see people who are of your age gaining such financial literacy and entrepreneur acumen such an early age because growing up, and most of the people listening know, I think I've said my age plenty of times. I'm 46, so closer to 50 than I am to 40 these days.
Still young.
And and so I wasn't taught that kind of financial, literacy at a younger age, right? It wasn't modeled to me because I come from, I'm the child of a generation that was like, get a job, work 60 years, retire, if you
Right.
own your own business, then you get your money, you spend it, you're not really, or you put it in a savings account. I didn't really hear a lot about investing until I was a little bit older. My dad, he did invest, but the most that he talked about was like, investing in mutual funds, like, the safe route to go, bonds and mutual funds and things of that nature. So I never learned about trading or investing in the market or investing in real estate. I didn't learn about that stuff. So I just think it's to see it's important in our community that we begin to do this because then we can begin to break cycles of this whole having to start from scratch to build, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can begin to create that legacy. That's one of my highest values is creating legacy for my son, because we got to create a new narrative around this whole generational wealth thing, do we not?
Absolutely. And one of the things you said really spoke to me was about the concept of investing. Investing is extremely important, whether that be in real estate or the stock market. That's how we can preserve our wealth and pass it down to the next generation. So I know a lot of people, their concept of money is it's something that you use to buy valuable goods. But honestly, money should be something that you use to buy assets, and the returns that you get on those assets should be used to buy those luxury goods that you want. Making residual income is really important. Cash flows is really important, and the things that can give you those cash flows are real estate and stocks for the most part. Just as an example, I recently started my investing life as well. I bought a house in the West End on Kenilworth Drive, and I bought it with one of my friends from high school. Just to tell you how much that has worked for us, not to throw out numbers out there and say to brag or anything, but we bought that house for $276,000
Mm-hmm.
in April of 2020, and now the house on Zillow at least is worth 430,000.
Wow.
And we've been renting it out all the while, so we don't pay the mortgage out of pocket at least. We make maybe 100 or $200 a month on it. But that's the power of investing. We've made over $100,000 in returns with basically just holding a property.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's amazing. So, it's an interesting thing because and I want to talk about this because I think you probably get this a lot. The stop or the hesitation to people delving into real estate investment, and especially like I'm going to share my experience is that, I grew up, I mean, I was trained to be a doctor, right? I like to buy a house was to buy a house to live in. I had no clue about real estate investing. And then when I did start to learn about it in my probably in my like mid 30s, then it seemed like such a gargantuan because I wasn't even in my mid 30s, like I was just kind of getting started with my private practice. So I wasn't and I didn't feel like I was in a financial position to be able to go and buy or flip houses or buy and rent houses. And it just didn't occur for me like I could do it. So I imagine as something that you see a lot is that in our community, it just seems so big and so scary that if, you know, like that in and of itself is a stop, right? But then here you are. And I wonder what kind of mindset you and your friend had to know that at your age you could do that. Now I know that you had already been working in the mortgage profession that could have helped, right? But but there's a different mindset that you have to just be like willing to jump in and you partner with your friend and now you guys are making this money, right? I'm just learning this now in the last 5 years that, oh, this is possible.
Right. So one of my favorite quotes is "Fortune favors the bold," and I live by that. I feel
Mm,
like if you can go after big goals, you're gonna that one of two things is gonna happen. You're gonna learn a really big lesson, and that's still a blessing in itself, or you're gonna exceed massively, which is clearly a blessing as well. So that's kind of my idea of going into things. You'll never really feel completely ready. I don't think there's any human being in the world that doesn't feel fear at all. You know,
mhm.
I definitely feel fear. When I started this business, I was in fear. And I still, I still have things that kind of put me in fear now, but that's, I feel like if your motivation overcomes your fear level, then you'll be able to be successful. And that's the thing about it is don't, I do feel the same emotions that everyone else feels. I do feel nervous. Things may not work out, but I frame it in a way where it's beneficial to me. One of two things are going to happen. I'm either going to learn or I'm going to succeed a lot.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what motivates me to do things before um, it may seem like it's time for me to do it. I started this mortgage company when I was 24 years old, and there's really no one who does that. It doesn't
Right.
seem like a logical thing to do. But for me, it was just like I wanted a challenge, and I figured I'd never feel more ready. It just was a matter of just going for it. If I failed, it would just be a lesson learned. So I think that's the mindset that people need to have. If you do feel that fear, work on motivating yourself to that level where you feel like that's going to supersede whatever fear you have, and just know that you really have nothing to lose. You just have something to learn, and if you're not ready yet, get ready. You know.
Yeah. This is so great. No, this is just, you just dropped so many gems. Like my favorite one, fortune favors the bold. Oh my goodness. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to use it. I'm going to like say it for myself, right? Because even though there are so many jumps off of cliffs that I've taken in my life, right? I still have to be reminded, and especially when I'm stepping into, because as we get older and we get comfortable, and especially when we attain a success, we get comfortable in the knowing of the thing that we're doing that brings that success, and then when it's time to step into something new, then it's like, oh, but I'm comfortable over here and I'm still getting that success. But then it's time, but that boldness, you never know what that boldness can bring.
Right.
And that for me, is what had me step out into, just like pull the trigger on this whole real estate thing. Cause I had been thinking about it for a while. And finally I was just like, you know what? Stop thinking about it and be about it. Damn it. so
Exactly.
so in even in this whole process, and I know like in my mind, once this deal is complete, then I will have learned what I need to learn to do the next deal, right? And then I can do a bigger deal the next time, like that's I'm starting to like absorb that quote, like being bold, being decisive, and taking those big steps. But what I want to teach my son, by the way, my son is 7, or he'll be 7. I just tell everybody he's 7, but he'll be 7 in October. This is the thing that's so important to me to teach my son. It is this kind of thing now, like being bold, stepping outside that box, being true to you. And that's what I love about what you did is like, you're going to the school to appease your parents, and 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 yet um you're finding a love in the mortgage industry, and you're gaining a knowledge and gaining that literacy. And a lot of us in our generation, we just did what our parents said. Not like that's a bad thing, because successes come from that. But I'm seeing a lot of, at least in my profession, doctors who went to medical school because their parents, that was culturally what they did, or their parents wanted them to, or they said it once and their parents locked in on that. And now they realize that wasn't for them, and they're like, right?
Right.
So, so it's just a wonderful thing that you learn that lesson so early, and it gives me so much hope space for how my son can learn it. I might have to like send him for you to mentor him like one summer, like go work for Calvin once he gets old enough.
I'd love to. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. So, I have a question, because I think that from the standpoint of buying a home, or achieving like home ownership, um, that people think that it's a very difficult process. You have to already have uh, a lot of money to do that. And I would love for you to dispel sort of some myths of home buying, if you will, like some of the things that people think and say are true, that you're like, not necessarily.
Right. So here's a couple myths that I've heard. One, buying a home is more expensive than renting. You need a huge amount of money for a down payment. Uh, Things like that are what I oftentimes hear. I don't have the credit. I'm not old enough. It's the list goes on and on. But in terms of buying a home, it's really not as expensive as many people think. Me being a mortgage professional, I've obviously gotten to see the inner workings of what it takes to buy a home. And it's honestly, there's three things we look at. I would call it ICE. It's an acronym. The it's for income, credit, and employment. Those are the three main things you need to have to buy a home. So first off, with income, you want to have documentable income. If you're like a W-2 employee, your W-2s and your pay stubs suffice for showing your income. If you're self-employed, tax returns and bank statements will be used to determine your income. Credit, everyone has a credit score, and we want to see your credit score be at least above over a 620 for my company. You want to see at least be over a 620. The higher, the better, though, of course. And then there's employment. Employment's going to be just showing that you've worked at some sort of company, or you've been in school for the past 2 years. We just want to see that you're doing something to advance yourself for the past 2 years, essentially. If you have those three things, then you can buy a home. In terms of the down payment, there's two types of loans that we generally see people do. It's either an FHA loan or a conventional loan. The third one that we see is the VA loan for those that are military veterans. There's 100% down, so they don't have to pay any down payment costs, but there are still closing costs associated with that, which my company can help with in some capacity at certain times. The conventional loan, you're looking at 3% down to 5% down. So that just depends on your income level. If you make a lot of income, you may not be able to access 3% down program, but you can access the 5% down program if it's primary residence. So just to think about that, for every $100,000, you're looking at $3,000 to $5,000 in down payment for the conventional loan. And there's FHA, which is 3.5%. That's really efficient for first-time home buyers and people who may have credit scores below a 700 and are looking for a primary residence. So there's a lot of different options out there. And for our investors as well, it's generally speaking 20% down to start with. But investing it's never too early to start investing. And if the numbers work out, we can help you kind of decide if it's going to be worth it for you. You stand to make a lot more money than you spend. So it's all about leverage. Our communities in general, at times we tend to be afraid of the bank. So we don't think the banks are our friend,
Yeah.
but really we need to actually start having those conversations with banks. We need to look for investors. We need to pool our money together to take on big projects
Mhm.
and to achieve what's called economies of scale. Because when you get to a certain size doing something, you can stand to make a lot more money and you can have a lot more impact on the market. So one thing I would say that I've learned as being a business professional and running a business is that sometimes you have to go into uncharted territories, be around people of different ethnicities, and you have to pursue, you know, money. You have to pursue banking. You have to go out there and meet people, talk to people, and really take it upon yourself to expand your horizons because it's important to have a support system in terms of banking and finance. Don't be afraid of the banks. Don't be afraid to talk to a loan officer or professional about your investing goals because people like me out there, if you're not ready today, we're going to get you ready. You
Yeah.
know, it's not just simple, oh, you qualify, you don't figure it out. It's, we're going to help you figure it out.
Yeah. So I love what you said, like, our community, we don't necessarily trust banks, and we don't think that banks and loan officers are our friend. And, one of the things that brought to me was, in order to move forward, we have to leverage a system, even if it's not built to benefit us. And the best way to leverage the system is to learn the system, right? So if we learn the system, then we know how to leverage it. And we don't, you don't have to, in this particular case, you don't have to trust something to learn it and to be able to leverage it, right, to your
Right.
benefit, because that's what we need to be doing right now in order to, and until such time that we can create our very own, like you said, economies of scale, right? And the other thing is, I think that a lot of times people don't want to talk to like loan officers, or they don't want to pursue it because of shame, like personal shame. Like, they should be further along, or, there's a lot of shaming around credit scores, a lot of judgment around personal finance and credit scores, especially once you get to a certain age. And so what happens is that, people will be trying to work on this stuff themselves, or they'll just give up completely, right? Which is definitely not the best choice, right? Because if you're giving
Right.
up, if you're completely giving up, then you're leaving on the table all the opportunity. But I think what I want, the listeners to know is that, um, even if you feel embarrassed, or some sort of shame around your finances, the best way to begin to remedy that is to talk to someone about what's going on, so that you can see how it is that you can fix it. And it feels so empowering. And a lot of times you realize you're not as bad off as you think, right?
Absolutely.
So, little story. Um, I, you know, I do well, and I had not until recently officially hired me a fee-based financial consultant, because, I did not want to look at, I have student loans, right? And I'm paying them down, but I just did not want to look at where my net worth it was or was not, right? I feel like, oh, I'm 46, my net worth should be a particular place, right? And if it's not that particular place, I'm just going to keep, chunking it down until I feel like this will be the right time for it to be, for me to look at it. But that's not the right attitude to have. So anyway, I finally said, okay, you know what? If I'm really trying to like break cycles, I need to kind of know where I am so that I can know how to get to where I want to be. And turns out I'm not nearly as bad as I thought I was. Like, I'm not even close. So I'm like looking at my stuff like, wow. Now imagine if I had 5 years ago, 10 years ago done this, then I might be way far ahead. So I say, take the lesson from the older people here who who have procrastinated and not taken action because of fear and shame. You have to get rid of that.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people who are way better off than they thought they would be. You know, that's the thing is you never know where you stand until you speak to someone and you figure out all of the options that you have. And one of the things I like to compare this to is like, okay, if you have an illness and you don't go to the doctor, you might feel good about it because you know you don't have to pay those medical bills. You don't have to confront what your health issues are. But thinking more long term, those health issues can get you in a lot of trouble. Those things can affect all aspects of your life. Right now, it can start off as a small problem, but it can eventually become very large. So I always recommend getting a financial checkup, whether that be a mortgage, um, a mortgage check-in with someone like myself, or even with a financial advisor, someone who can at least take a look at your finances and say, here, this is where we stand. This is what your financial health looks like. And given your goals and where you want to go, this is what you should be doing every month, every week, every year to get exactly where you want to be. And I think thinking of things in more of that type of sense where we're doing preventative financial work or we're doing proactive, preemptive financial work is what's important for our community. We can't just wait till there's crisis for us to speak to someone who's a professional. We have to actually build wealth. We can't fear being broke. We have to want to be wealthy.
Yes.
So we have to be driven by a greater goal. We can't just fear the worst case. And that's what I feel like it's what creates people who are going to be great entrepreneurs, people who are going to be great great financial literates, right? So as a community, oftentimes we fear being broke, but the true motivation should be to build wealth. We have to actively move towards building wealth instead of fearing what could happen if we do the opposite.
Right.
And then that spurs upon you doing the research that's needed. You do the research that's needed. You find the connections that are needed. You're moving towards something positive.
Yeah.
Building actively instead of trying to maintain what you have. Because for some people, they might make $10,000 and they think, okay, I have a ton of money, right? Let me protect everything I have. But the real mindset is, let me take my $10,000 and let me turn this into 100,000.
That's right.
That's the difference between being fearful and being motivated by something else. That's the difference.
I love that. And it's so interesting. So in the world of NLP, in the world of mind remapping, that's what I do. That's what I train in NLP. We talk about this whole moving towards versus away from, right? And what you focus your mind on is what you produce. And so, we are good at crisis management because how our history is all about averting crisis. Our history is about coming out of crisis. Our history is all about that, right? Well, let me just say, the history that we've been taught is all about that, right? This history of moving away from tragedy, moving away from chaos, moving away from, the negative. That's all we've been taught. And we weren't taught who the other part of our descendants, which is, the kings and queens and inventors and musicians and business owners and millionaires and, like property owners, landowners. We weren't taught that aspect of it. I could say that's by design, but that's a whole other podcast. Right. So, right. So it's important where you focus your mind is what you produce. And when we're focused on, oh, I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be broke. The thing about the unconscious mind is that it doesn't recognize linguistically the negative. It doesn't recognize the not or the don't so when you're saying that you don't want, all your mind hears is that thing that you don't want. And so then you're focusing on that. And guess what you do is you produce more of that. So it's so great that you're saying like we have to focus toward like our wealth, focus toward building instead of focusing away from and running away from and being in fear about something we're trying to get out of. That's one of the basic tenets of like remapping minds is like starting to listen to the language that's coming out of our mouths and look at where we're putting our focus. I really love that you said that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just trying to think if I have any more questions because we've covered so much ground. Like we've covered just from the myths from home buying. We've covered, this like focusing toward our wealth and learning. I think that's one thing we've kind of skimmed the surface, but haven't really gone deeper into it is this whole idea of financial literacy, like becoming literate and what that means actually. And like, if you were to say like what are the first steps to becoming financially literate, what would you say?
I say the first step of becoming financially literate is figuring out what your specific goals are.
Mhm.
What do you want out of life? Because then you have a baseline of where you're trying to go. So if you're someone whose goal is to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have a different roadmap than someone whose goal is to retire at 55, maybe with $10 million in the bank, whatever it may be. So
Mhm.
figure out where you're going first. Figure out where you're going. Once
Mhm.
you figure out where you're going, you can start reverse engineering what specifically you need to make in a year to reach your goal, or what businesses you need to start to reach your goal. There's just a lot of different ways to get there. And once you become financially literate, you realize, well, there's more options than I thought. When we're not as financially literate, there seems like there's maybe one or two paths to get rich. You know, we go to the NBA, we play football, our parents are born rich,
Right.
the list goes on and on. But those are all, a lot of people think that, but the truth is that you can make a lot more money off of being smart than you can make money off of being athletic.
Yes,
And
yes.
you can make a lot more money off of being disciplined than you can by just being, someone who just makes a ton of money.
Mhm.
Because the truth is the power of compounding interest, whether that be investing in stocks or investing in real estate. Once we let our money compound, we can create a large amount of wealth. Because that's just a basic, simple example. Um, if we get 10% returns on $1 million, you can make $100,000 a year without lifting a finger.
Mm.
If you make 10% returns on $10 million, you can make $1 million a year without lifting a finger. So it's just understanding the way the numbers work in relation to each other to
Mhm.
build that wealth that you want to reach your end goal. And I think the best way to start is by just doing basic research. We all have, Google to start with, and just start Googling basic business terms or go on YouTube and watch some videos. And if you specifically have a goal to buy a house, speak to someone who's a professional like myself. That's what I recommend, is just figuring out what your goals are. Then we can start reverse engineering a way to get you there.
Yes, yes. And as you're speaking, I'm like, do, you need to create a course or coaching program because you have so much knowledge and they say multiple streams. But I mean, you just have so much knowledge that people could really benefit from just to get started and achieving that financial literacy from the get, right? And yeah, that's all I want to say about it. Is that I just, that's the entrepreneur brain that I have. It's like, why doesn't he have some kind of course? And I'm sure it's not the first time that you've been told that. It won't be the last time. So just putting the bug in your ear. If you create it and market it, then they will come. Especially the given the shift in mindset that we're seeing in our community around building wealth. I mean, it's happening, right? We're seeing
Absolutely.
that shift in our mindset. Given that's the case, I think that it's important that we have people like you who are dedicated to helping people gain that literacy, gain that knowledge, right? And get to that next level. So I just thank you.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I'm trying to help any way I can.
Yeah, well, you not only are helping me, but in this conversation, I know you're going to help a ton more. So I can't wait to share it with our community. And of course, I want you to let our listeners know what's the best way to reach out to you, especially if you're, well, you do you help people outside of Georgia, by the way?
We're licensed currently in Georgia, Florida, and Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Our next goal is to take over all of the Southeast. So Virginia's coming soon, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama. So we're going to fill out the whole Southeast. But right now, Georgia, Florida, and Texas for residential mortgages, but we do commercial properties in all 50 states. So
Oh, all right. So listen up, y'all. If you are in the Southeast region, because very, very soon, Calvin is going to be taking over the Southeast region, or if you're doing corporate in any of the 50 of the United States, you need to reach out to this brother right here. And how would they do such a thing?
So you can text me on my personal phone number. My number is 770-656-9593, 770-656-9593. Or you can go to our website, which is www.goldwaterhomeloans.com. So gold, like, we all like gold chains. Water, like the water in the ocean, and homeloans.com will get you there, and you can just apply online. We'll get your information. One of our loan officers will reach out to you within 5 minutes. So multiple ways to reach us. You can also follow us on Instagram at Goldwater Home Loans, and same with Facebook at Goldwater Home Loans. You can reach us there as well.
Awesome. Well, we definitely will have this in the show notes so that people can reach out. Or if you're watching this video, like you're watching it on YouTube, watching the video, then it'll be in the description. It'll be in the description. So if you're in the Southeast region, Texas, Georgia, Florida, and then all of the Southeast region is coming, and you're thinking about buying a home, you want to keep this brother's number in your pocket. All right, lock them into your cell phone. I can't believe you just gave your personal cell phone number. You need a business phone. And so just reach out to him. He, true story, if you reach out to them, they'll reach out to you very, very quickly. They're very communicative, very, just accommodating, and also will tell you the real, tell you what you qualify for, what you need to do, what they're looking for. And that's what I really love. It's just someone who's just really straight, but also is willing to teach and help you understand the process. So
absolutely.
Yes. So anyways, I so appreciate you being on. I am going to, so listeners heard me earlier squeal because I know your father, and I can't wait to text Dr. Wilkinson and let him know that I just interviewed his son on my podcast. And for those of you, quick story for those of you listening, I met Calvin's father well over probably a good decade ago. And when he owns, it's American International University of Medicine, right? School of Medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And he owns this school. And so, 10 years ago or so, I was asked to speak at the graduation at his father's school. And that's how we met. And so we've been sort of in communication ever since, off and on. But I've always regarded Dr. Wilkinson as an amazing person who, I've just been blessed to have in my circle of influence. And now here I am talking to his son who, 2 degrees of separation, you guys. You just never know who you're going to run into. And that's why it's important to, be kind, be be grateful, and just put yourself out there, because you never know when all of these things will come full circle and how your community of influence, your circle of influence grows. Because I was clear from the first time that we talked that you and I were going to have a long-term business relationship. So he's on my team.
Absolutely.
Cool beans. Anything you want to leave the listeners with before we get done?
So just a few pointers just to remember: fortune favors the bold. Let's run towards financial freedom instead of running away from being broke or poor. Let's run towards having wealth. Make those connections, reach out to people before you even think you're ready, because you may never feel quite ready. Always let your drive supersede your fear. We need more drive than fear. And I think those things right there are the main takeaways. And if you can implement those in your life, then the sky's the limit.
Wonderful words. Gold, you guys. Take them and run with them. So you guys heard it here. Go text Calvin or go to the website, goldwaterhomeloans.com. And, as always, thank the listeners for listening, because without you, there is no podcast. As always, I ask that you leave a comment or leave a review and let the people know behind you that there is transformational conversation happening here, because that is what this podcast is for, is to empower you to create the next level of your life. So you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you on the next podcast.
See you soon. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Namaste, y'all.